So a quick background into Kea and who we are. We were founded in 2001 when many Kiwi minds were heading offshore. Our founders, Stephen Tyndall and David Teese, recognised that for a nation as small and remote as Aotearoa, offshore Kiwi were crucial to our connectedness to the world. 20 years later, we're still highlighting inspiring Kiwi doing amazing mahi offshore. We emphasise the success of Kiwi export businesses and showcase to New Zealand the significant opportunities in connecting with both offshore and returning Kiwi through dedicated research and results. So linking into this, our first speaker for today, who I'll introduce right now, is Lucy von Sturmer. So Lucy is a Kea member and a recent returner from Amsterdam. Lucy is the founder of The Humblebrag, an impact consultancy and training academy on a mission to put diverse voices in the spotlight using visibility and media impact as a tool for change.
Joining me today, we have Jade, who's founder of Off-Piste Provisions, a plant-based meat impact venture offering protein seekers, independent thinkers, and eco-warriors an alternate route from the status quo to a more optimistic future. And we have Elina Ashimbayeva, co-creator of Storyo, a platform that creates stories of everyday women and other marginalized genders around us. And I just want to say that I have come and arrived here in Aotearoa, New Zealand after being away for 10 years. And Elina's platform was one of the first that I found that was really doing the work here. So Roselle, I will make you host again so you can invite our speakers into the panel with me. And I look forward to seeing some of your questions too. You're welcome to drop a question into the question box. I don't know if we've got any yet, but please feel free to be part of the discussion also with us. Elina, you're presenting yourself twice today, but I have the feeling that one of the Elinas turning up is also Jade. So Jade, my first question for you was, from your personal experience as a CEO, what has the change journey been like for you?
Yeah, hey, great to be here, and thanks for the talk, Lucy. Really inspiring. Got me thinking. You're throwing my notes out now because you started firing things off in my head. From my own journey, I guess, from change making in more recent times, has all been around, I guess, impact, or what we used to call social enterprise. But before that, I can remember the first change making, I guess, I did in my own journey, which really, faced a bit of pushback, was when I learned Chinese at university in 1993. And just from my friends, parents, even, those in my network, were kind of dumbfounded why I'd go and learn Chinese. And kind of 30 years on, I think it's pretty obvious why. But when we moved into ESG in 2000 with my first business in China, where I spent those 20 years, it just wasn't even a concept in China. China was on a massive push for commercial development, prosperity, social, political reform. And the idea of a business looking out for the environment and society was just completely alien. So it was quite a difficult conversation with your employees, with your stakeholders, as to why you'd even endeavor on that task. It just didn't fit. So I guess it was about resilience and tenacity. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's tenacity, or what we call in a company grit. And that often is the defining element between a great idea and a successful outcome. So, we got pretty good at grit, being head against a brick wall, another way to put it, but we were passionate about it. And you touched on ikigai, and that really is what gives you that passion. So unless you're incredibly passionate about something like that, I wouldn't go on the journey. It's just too painful. But if you are passionate about it, that pain is like a hard run. You love it during the midst of it. So I definitely get the passion dialed in, and it definitely helps on that front.
Bit of a blessing and a curse to know your purpose, isn't it?
Absolutely, but the rewarding, it is the most rewarding part of my job, and it has been for the last 20 years. And that's the key thing to keep in mind. And, last piece on that would be, a story which, I experienced in China, which was our impact was around poverty alleviation. and we had about 250 employees who are typically not from Beijing, had come from very poor parts of China, and hence were working in a very low considered industry, which is food and beverage. And we had I guess a ritual, a tradition that when employees hit 5 years in our company, I would go back to their home village and meet the family, and give homage to their parents for their support and allowing their children to work for their company. And some of those journeys were fascinating in all the far reaches of China, and it really allowed you to understand where they came from, and we built an incredible culture because of that. So without a doubt, that was the best part of the job, was going back and sharing a beer with the dad in some obscure part of China.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. And Elina, I feel a bit of an affinity because I really love your platform, and I think that we need more diverse voices building better systems. And I think that you're doing amazing work here in Aotearoa, really putting diverse voices in the spotlight. So do you want to tell us a little bit about why you think diversity is so important in the workplace, and the specific role that, here in Aotearoa we can play?
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Lucy. And yeah, thank you, Jade, for all the insight on your work as well. We talk a lot. I think the words diversity, inclusion, equity have become very buzzwordy in the society, right? And what happens a lot of the times is, we do know there's been all this research and people talk about the team efficiency will increase and productivity and the outputs and outcomes and all of that. And yes, that's been shown, there's been research around it, but I kind of come from, I guess, a different perspective and thinking around, let's not think about it as a business outcome. Let's not put a corporate value to diversity. Let's put a more of a human storytelling value on that. And I think, as what Jay said before, is a lot of leaders now, or people in companies, you can be a leader, doesn't matter where you, like what your title is, right? Thinking of diversity as a bit of a threat in a tick box, because it's now really, everyone's talking about it. There's a lot of pressure for companies to act. There is a lot of pressure from ground swelling. If a company does something wrong, people will speak up. There's going to be petitions and social media.
Your interns have never been more powerful, right?
Yeah, so people are a bit more like afraid, and I think they use this as a tick box and as a commitment. And what I think call people forward to, that I think this work is so enriching and wonderful personally, and it's fine that we haven't, for whatever reasons you haven't been exposed to particular groups of people or particular views. That's okay, that's already happened. How do we now call all ourselves and people around us to sort of courageously step into the space of allowing yourself to learn and allowing yourself to realize things that maybe you have done something wrong in the past, but that's okay. I'm going to learn, I'm going to do better. And I think just experiencing like that learning from leaders, you can just feel it when someone says, hello, we're going to have, our value now is diversity. We will put on our website and we're going to have 50-50 hiring policy or something, whereas the underlying worldview is missing. And people can really feel it. Like people that you employ, people that, whether it's women, queer people, whatever the marginalizations are, people really feel whether they belong or not. Like I've worked in academia and government and startups and consulting. And because I am like a loud person about this stuff, I was surprised how many people would come to me and say, hey, like, thank you so much for speaking up about it, because I don't know how to, or I don't think it's my place, or I'm afraid or whatever, but it just means so much for knowing that people care about this. People care about migrant experiences. People care about experiences of women, of non-binary, of, all these things. So yeah, I think it's such a wonderful cultural revolution that is really hard if you don't believe in it. And if you think it's a tick box exercise, you will encounter and hit a lot of blockers. So how do you invite yourself on a journey of like, I'm going to enrich my life? I haven't experienced all these things. I don't know what it means to be gender diverse. I don't know what it means to be a migrant. But wow, once you like sort of open yourself up to it, your personal life will just become so much better. So if even if you're doing it for selfish reasons, just allow yourselves to experience that, and then from that on, the work will become easier, because once you personally have a buy-in, then all the other things will will become easier to take another step.
Awesome. It's so great to hear about that, and also to have the perspective about the personal enrichment that can come. I think that cultural fit is a term that we're all familiar with in our recruitment processes, but what does it exactly mean? And I think that it can be really difficult work, but is really important. And what I think is so exciting is that more and more people are aware of the intersectionality of the issues that we face, that it's not just sustainability over here and diversity over here, but actually, maybe the problems can also be the solutions. So with that said, I have one more question for each of you, and Elina, I'll come back to you immediately, just because I'm quite inspired by what you said. And I wanted to ask you specifically about here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, is change happening fast enough? What is this, what is the status quo right now? Because obviously I'm a returning Kiwi. I'd love to hear, what's really happening.
Yeah, I mean, I think the same can be said around literally anything around the world, around change making or challenge status quo, that it's not happening fast enough. Look at the climate, look at any intersections of any social issues, whether it's, you have your hand up? No, okay. Whether it's, housing, whether it's racism, whether it's whatever, I feel like we can all, I talk a lot about like, how do we change the work that goes into changing your underlying worldviews is not I'm not gonna listen to a podcast and suddenly realize that I'm gonna do all the things differently. I'm not gonna come to one talk and suddenly, click. It's a lot of work that goes one tip of another. It's a journey. And in saying that, how do we speed up the journey, right? Because this work had to happen yesterday. I think what happens a lot, which is really fair, a lot of people, there's anger. There is like holding space for that anger of people who have been excluded. We've built barriers. We currently build systems, or we are upholding the systems that either preventing people from going into specific jobs, preventing people from asking for raise, whatever the issues are, right? The system has been created that way. So people do have a lot of anger, a lot of unresolved, well, obviously unresolved because we haven't resolved the issues, the trauma or whatever else. And I think it's for all of us, there is work to do. And for all of us, there's work to do to hold space for ourselves and for others. And I think it's really hard. It's really hard, right? To I can be a migrant, non-English speaker, a woman, queer, whatever, right? But then I still have so much to learn. There is work for me to do, but there is also work for me to hold space for myself and for others. So yeah, I think we kind of have to, and I just wanted to make a quick note on that. I think when people think about diversity or sustainability as if it's like, we're going to address diversity on a Thursday at 2 p.m. in the meeting, or we got to talk about sustainability in Q4. I think the mindset should be, it's not a separate piece of work. It's how do we incorporate that into everything we do? And that becomes faster, right? Then it's like, oh, we're hiring a person. We're hiring them anyways. How do we make sure we're hiring them with all the things that we need to incorporate? We're looking for the best candidates. We're looking for the more diverse candidates, all of that stuff, rather than saying, oh no, we're going to hire the person now, and then we're going to look at diversity separately.
Yeah.
So I think if we incorporate that thinking into everything we do, suddenly it becomes faster. Suddenly there is no, COVID, priorities are changing. I can't do diversity now. I have to do it in a year.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's happening slowly, but I think if we all call ourselves forward to it a bit more.
Yeah, I think externally, when you're outside of Aotearoa, New Zealand, you think it's this beacon of diverse representation, and when you land, sometimes you find out that that's not necessarily as advanced as you would hope it is. Coming back to Elina/Jade, Jade, I wanted to ask you, I mean, obviously, we can have this nice conversation about B Corps and business responsibility, but we are facing a climate emergency. COP26 is around the corner. New Zealand has a lot of issues that maybe we're not set to resolve with our climate commitments. Do you feel like business leaders and businesses here get it, that they're stepping into this space fast enough? Yeah, I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, I think it's relative. You know, one of the joys of New Zealand is that we are at the bottom of the world, but that can also be to a detriment in some issues. And I think when it comes to some change leadership issues, it can be a detriment. We're just a little bit unplugged about some of the bigger issues that are probably happening or in our face on a daily basis. You know, you live in a country of 1.4 billion people every day, and you see poverty in front of you. You are driven every day to deal with poverty. Where in New Zealand, I would argue it's probably more in pockets of the country, using that example. So it's not in your face. So it's not, I don't think it's a fault of New Zealand's, but it's just in the paradise that we do live in, it does mean a lot of these issues aren't always front and center as they are in a lot of places like Asia and Africa and South America. But I feel that that shouldn't stop us, and that shouldn't create any disconnect between the emergencies and the crisis at hand. Anybody who's somewhat informed will see the science, will see the thought leaders that are putting a pretty clear case. So it really comes down to individual action. And, you know, just talking about that courage piece you talked about earlier, Lucy, that's really what it comes down to. We can't rely on other people to step up. And everybody needs to step up in their own way. And that doesn't mean that everybody's got to be a leader. A team is not about having 100 leaders who are trying to lead the way forward. And we can move between different roles depending on the projects, depending on areas of expertise, depending on our bandwidth at the time. But the key thing is that you're part of that tribe, you're part of that side of history. That's what's important. And leading to that, I mean, looking at things like, well, how do you make change? How do you become a leader, whether you're an employee, as we saw in the poll, majority of people in this room are, versus maybe an employer who maybe have a bigger mandate. Let's not forget, you look at the political system, change comes from the people. Change in an organization comes from the employees. It does not typically come from some heroic leader that we like to put in a pedestal. That is not how most organizations operate. I'm sure you'll get your iconic leaders, but that's very much the rarity. So don't think that you're underpowered or you don't have the means to create change in your organization. You have, by probability, the most chance to create change from being an employee rather than being an employer. So it's about uniting with those like-minded individuals. And I would encourage to go to your management or go to your leadership with a really well thought through plan, more than just passion and idealism. Go with a really well thought through plan, which aligns with your company's goals, aligns with your recent trainings or your management offsites. And it shows data, statistics. It's not wishful thinking. It's not hope. It's not, very holistic thoughts. It's a really clear, well thought through plan, which aligns with the business. And lastly, and I always find the most powerful thing you can present to leadership is examples in your industry about why that is putting your competitors ahead of you, because nothing unites leadership more than an outside threat from a competitor. So, use these examples either in other industries, but if you go to leadership with that kind of thought through plan, I guarantee you will get airtime. And whether or not the organization goes with it, well, that's their decision. And then you may decide not to be part of that organization because they haven't listened to a well thought through plan. But that empowers you. And I would encourage everybody to, not underestimate their impact within an organization.
Love that. Couldn't have put it better myself. And yes, Jade, I think it's so important to come with the business case. And I've had an off-site conversation with Elina about this before, because it's so difficult when you're in this space to hold credibility with all actors. And if you are speaking out on these issues, as an activist, to really start to speak the corporate language is difficult, and finding this balance is key. But you're right, I think that we're not going to be able to drive change unless we do come with plans and we do come with those competitive advantages, as you say. So that's really interesting. I just dropped in an example, a fun example. It's a YouTube link about following as leadership. And I loved what you said there. You run your own business. You know that you don't want 48 leaders. Sometimes you want people that are just hard workers that are going to contribute to your mission and your vision. So that's a link about following as a form of leadership. And it's really fun. Oh, I just sent it to the hosts and not the panelists. Thank you, Elina. I will send it to everybody. And Roselle, I will give it back to you to take it away. Unless I do have 1 minute to show that video to everybody. I do? Okay, well, there you go. You might have to make me host again very quickly. Perfect. All right, so just to wrap up this very serious session that we had, a fun example of following as a form of leadership before we back to Roselle.
About leadership and making a movement, then let's watch a movement happen start to finish in under 3 minutes and dissect some lessons. First, of course, a leader needs the guts to stand alone and look ridiculous. But what he's doing is so simple, it's almost instructional. This is key. You must be easy to follow. Now here comes the first follower with a crucial role. He publicly shows everyone else how to follow. Notice how the leader embraces him as an equal. So it's not about the leader anymore. It's about them, plural. Notice how he's calling to his friends to join in. So it takes guts to be a first follower. You stand out, you brave ridicule yourself. Being a first follower is an underappreciated form of leadership. The first follower transforms a lone nut into a leader. If the leader is the flint, the first follower is the spark that really makes the fire. Now here's the second follower. This is a turning point. It's proof the first has done well. Now it's not a lone nut and it's not two nuts. 3 is a crowd and a crowd is news. A movement must be public. Make sure outsiders see more than just the leader. Everyone needs to see the followers because new followers emulate followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people, then 3 more.
All right, well, you've got the link in the chat box if you want to see what it means to take a follow, to build a movement. Roselle. Thanks for indulging me.
Is that Simon Sinek narrating that or not?
I'm not sure, but definitely a leader in that movement for sure.
Sounds like him. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much to our 3 speakers. We've actually received no questions, which means I hope that you guys have covered everything. But if anyone does have any questions, please feel free to email them through to me and I can forward them on to our panelists. So I just wanted to say a massive thank you to Lucy, Jade and Elina. We really appreciate you taking the time to share your guidance and experiences with us today. A big thank you for you who joined us today. We'll be sending out an email with a copy of the recording, details of each of our speakers and the amazing things they are working on. And I hope you all have a great afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.